The only thing I can tell you is many of my family members wear this cross.
Right.
I own this cross. I wore it with a beautiful silver chain. And when you see it, it's so unusual that I remember the first time I saw it in person, and I said to myself, how is it possible 51 years in the industry and you've never seen a cross like this? Because it was designed by Antonio Vedele, who was a jewelry designer. This Pope Francis wore this cross from when he was a cardinal in Buenos Aires. So he's actually been wearing this since I believe about 98 or the year 2000. And it's so three-dimensional. You see the sign of the Holy Spirit on the top as the dove.
Yes.
You see
and look at even the lamb.
The image of Christ carrying one sheep, and then the flock of sheep in the background. And the symbolism is that Christ will go through any lengths to save any one of us. And
so
that's
powerful, isn't it?
Well, not only is it powerful, but Pope Francis, you know, being the Pope of the people, he would allow people to actually touch it on his neck. And he's the first Pope to wear a papal cross that isn't in gold, that isn't encrusted in diamonds. And, you know, so people were, they knew he was not going to remove it.
There's a humbleness, right?
Of course.
Simplicity, where there's this connection unlike ever before with a previous Pope. And I think that is the power and the genuine power that he has to be able to reach across and to touch so many incredible lives. And the fact that we're doing this at this value, when you read the reviews on hsn.com, this is a customer pick. And when you read how this has changed people's lives and how having this and wearing this gives them comfort, gives them peace, whether it's through trials and tribulations, whether it's the joys in our life, to have and to wear something as beautiful as this cross, it is different. It is a conversation piece. Yes, we are all normally used to that classic silhouette of a cross, right?
Exactly.
And we are used to seeing that. But this cross is something
unique.
That is unique.
Well,
is
it's
that
like
conversation.
Pope Francis.
Exactly.
You know, and when you think of, you know, even in the short time now that he has been the Pope, you know, the impact that he's had on all of us, and he continues to have on us all. So to own something that represents him at, again, such an amazing, amazing value.